So when I first saw the I don't dream of labor trend on my homepage, I was like, are we doing this? Like, are we talking about this right now? Because I'm ready. So I know a lot of people are making like response videos basically off of like Catherall's videos and Lynette Atkins videos, but I just feel like of the videos that I've watched, there's like a big piece of the puzzle that's missing from all of them, and that's neoliberalism. Are we really gonna let neoliberalism just like slip under the rug right now? So what I want to do in my video is talk about obviously capitalism and labor, because that's what this is all about, but explain how like neoliberalism has shaped the relationship between capitalism and labor and like shaped it in a negative way. So growing up to immigrant parents, education was a really big deal in my household. My parents actually came to Canada to go to school. They came from Trinidad. That's enough for Trinidad. So yeah, it was always mapped out for me that like you go to school to get good grades so that you can get into a good university, and once you get a good degree, you'll get a good job. Good obviously meaning like high wages, benefits, the full package. And I remember in my last year of high school, there was a lot of stigma towards kids who like weren't going to university. Like the people that chose a college path, it was kind of like, ooh, like, what are you really gonna get a job when you go to college? Like, but then also for the kids who were going to university, there was a lot of stigma to like people who weren't doing degrees that like, you know, people felt like was gonna get you paid. I personally feel like high school makes you think the world is very like categorized, where like there's English, there's math, and there's sciences. That's not the case. Going to university was like kind of mind-boggling to think about like all of the other categories that exist, and also like how those categories are all interrelated. Yeah, so it was really not helpful growing up thinking like, you know, everything is like 1, 2, 3, and then realizing like, you know, there's infinite amount of categories. But like in Canada and Ontario, there's like certain universities are known for certain programs, and so like people that got into Queen's for engineering or like Guelph for agriculture or Carleton for journalism, like it was like, wow, good for you, like you're gonna make something of your life. But like other people that went to other universities or went to the same universities but for programs that those universities are not recognized for, it was kind of like, oh, okay, what are you gonna do with that? There's a lot of pressure in grade 12 to like pick the right degree so that you aren't gonna, you know, end up homeless in 4 years. And with that being said, you obviously like don't want to pick a degree that you don't think is gonna get you a job, even though the degree you're picking might not be what you're even interested in. Like I know so many people that went into nursing and didn't want to be nurses. They just knew that there was a shortage of nurses in Ontario, and so the chances of them getting a job after they finished school was extremely high. And you know, they were right. Like they all got jobs. Everyone that I know went to school for nursing got a job after school. So even from high school, we're like trained to think of ourselves and to like morph ourselves into what our economic output could be. Like your value is in what you can produce in society in order to get paid. And so don't pick a degree that's not gonna get you paid, even if that's what you wanna do. So once you're done uni and you enter the workforce, it's like a race right from the jump. So like when you meet up with friends, it's like, oh, like how are you doing? You know, just working. Or you ask them what they do and they like, you know, tell you their job. I personally have a full script that I use when people ask me what I do. I can do it for you. Oh, you know, I just do marketing for a medical device company, and you know, like, you know, when you go to hospital, you have like the bag and the tubing that goes into the pump and it goes into the catheter into your body. Like we sell all of that. That's like my script. Sometimes if they seem interested, I'll throw in the fact that like my company's IV solution bags are used in like TV shows, so Grey's Anatomy, all those hospital scenes with like the drip bags, those are our bags. That's just like what I was explaining before. Like we're groomed to think of ourselves as economic beings. Like what is my economic value? If I don't have economic value, then I don't have value as a human being. But I feel like with COVID, that sort of like kind of pulled the curtain all back on all of that, because it was honestly within seconds, the governments were like, these are the essential workers. Everyone else does not need to be going to their office. And the essential workers just happen to be the professions that are not paid well, or they have a lot of contract work, or just like not really held in high regard up until now. And I think the obvious reason for that is because we don't pay people in this society, we don't pay people based on the value they provide to humans. We pay people based on the value they provide to our economic system. So if you are a job that, people aren't jobs, but if you have a job where your work helps maintain capitalism, you're gonna get paid for that. If your job is just work that helps people be people, like you keep people alive in a hospital, or you like teach future students who are gonna like work in our jobs and government soon, like, well, that's not maintaining capitalism, so you get paid whatever. And like lawyers, international trade lawyers, accountants, tax lawyers, like those people get paid more because they're maintaining the system that makes money. I feel like this whole I don't dream about labor movement or a trend on YouTube and on Twitter is kind of part of this whole societal reckoning that we're having with capitalism right now that was definitely accelerated because of the pandemic. Because when you think about it, capitalism just means that the means of production are owned by capitalists, by like individuals. So like in a situation like a farmer who, you know, their work is to farm and they own all the equipment that helps them farm, and then they get their crops and they sell it. Like they own the means of production, they own the means of farming, the equipment that they need, and their labor is directly related to that. But then they can control the prices that they sell their produce for to a degree. They sell the end product and they get the money for themselves and they use it how they see fit. Now, a lot of us work in situations where we don't own the means of production. Like there's a corporation that owns the factory that makes the cars or whatever product, or there's another corporation that owns the platform or the web services that the service is provided for, and we just like sell our labor to them to help them maintain their system or maintain their factories, and they go off and sell the product. But when they sell the product, they get all the profit and they determine how they want to spend those profits. So in recent history, we have examples of where corporations would use those profits to pay their workers very handsomely. It wasn't even that long ago, like ask your parents. Now we're in a situation where companies and corporations will use those profits to benefit shareholders. They'll pay them dividends, they'll do stock buyback programs, so each stock that you own is worth more. These were not things that were like held to high esteem 50 years ago. The only thing that changed was that neoliberalism kind of took hold of capitalism, whereas before there was a really regulated capitalism after World War II, which led to a lot of economic growth for everybody. And then Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher came in, they were like, let's switch it up a bit. Started to implement neoliberal policies on the capitalist systems that they were governing, and yeah, the worker just suffered in return. So when people say I don't dream about labor, they're talking about like the disconnectedness between you working and then the end product that gets sold for money. Before, that used to be one and the same, and now it's very disconnected. When they say things like, oh, start a YouTube channel or start your own business, like they're trying to connect labor with the final product so that there's no longer another person or corporation telling you what you're worth, because you're worth what your work puts out and what you get back from your work. So that kind of gets into hustle culture, which is also problematic, because what people don't really talk about when they talk about starting your own business is like, you could work a 9 to 5, which is 40 hours a week, but you can also be an entrepreneur and work 80 hours a week because your income is now dependent on how much you work. And when you're starting out a business, you're gonna have to work a lot. And the other kind of twisted thing about like I don't dream about labor, start a YouTube channel solution is like when you blow up on YouTube, those people hire editors for their videos. They hire like videographers to help them make more content. They hire managers. So now you are the capitalist because you're employing other people. Like what, are they just gonna start making their own I don't dream about labor videos because you blew up and hired them? Like, but on the flip side to all of that, there's also people whose response to I don't dream about labor is like, if I didn't have to work to financially support myself to survive, then I would travel the world, or I would try to find a cure for like this illness, or I would help the poor, garden, knit, read, like watch more movies, who cares? But like the things that they would do if they didn't have to work to financially support themselves are things that would just nourish them as human beings. And I think that just proves that we are not meant to be economic beings. Like this world treats us as economic beings. We're only spoken to when the company wants us to buy something. We're only really seen as valuable when we make a lot of money, and those things are not fulfilling. Realistically, if none of us had to work in an economy, we'd probably all just choose to be around other humans. The sad part about all of this is that we don't have to go that far back into history to know of a time when labor was thought of differently. Like back in the 50s, after World War II, America rose to dominance because of its really, really tight regulation of capitalism. Essentially, there was a trade-off between corporations and workers. It was like, you work for us for 40 hours and we will pay you enough to live a life outside of those work hours that is fulfilling. And a lot of people bought into that because it benefited them. But then when neoliberal policies started being implemented on capitalist systems, like corporations no longer had to care about their workers, because now they could just move their money to other countries, build factories, and spend much less on workers in third world countries than what they would spend in North America. Outsourcing labor and outsourcing production was not possible because of certain labor laws in North America that literally did not allow for that. And I feel like that broke a lot of trust between employers and employees, because it's like, before you'd have a company that's like, we're gonna invest in you for 40 years and when you retire you'll get a fat pension. And now it's like, well, we don't know if we're gonna need you next year, so we're just gonna have you sign a 1-year contract. And oh, look, because we don't need you, so you can hit the road. So from a worker perspective, it's like, why would I dedicate my life to a company that like isn't even invested in me? And then from the company's perspective, it's like, well, we don't know if like these people are gonna stay, so like we don't wanna invest too much in them. Like it's like cyclical, this like negative relationship between capitalists and workers. And this like toxic relationship didn't really exist when we had stronger labor laws and powerful unions.
I said what I said.
Now, after 40 years of neoliberalism, we have like this business environment where working at Amazon and standing on your feet all day for $15 an hour is actually enticing to some people. Or taking a 1-year contract just to get experience, or working an internship for free are your only options. Like, it's gotten to a point where workers have such little power and say over like how they're treated and how they're valued that they're becoming completely disillusioned with the entire economic system. This is kind of like what Karl Marx had foreshadowed. I mean, I think he thought it was gonna happen a lot sooner, and it's still not really happening on like, you know, revolutionary scale, but like, so you don't dream about labor, that's great, but also think about how labor got to the way it is. Like, it didn't just happen to be this way. It's not always been this way. There's ways for labor to be beneficial to both the employer and to the employee. There are ways for workers and employers to benefit from a labor relationship. And it doesn't like take a revolution for that to happen. All it takes is a couple of politicians to change and update our labor laws so that more people see the benefits of their labor. That's why it's a good thing that we live in a democracy, because if you don't like how things are, you actually can change it. It's called voting. It's actually probably one of the easiest things you can do if like you don't want to dream about labor, but you also don't want to start your own business. Like, you can just get politicians in office that will make the changes for you. So I hope you like this video. Let me know in the comment section what you think about I Don't Dream About Labor, whether it's something that you think is solved by just becoming an entrepreneur, or if it can be solved by like changing our policies and changing like, you know, neoliberal capitalism and regulating it so that it benefits everybody. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.